Oh, we're raising the roof.
The music stopped. Sorry, the music stopped. Kia ora, Chewy. Kia ora, whānau. How's everyone doing?
Oh, mate, I'm starting to really enjoy Mondays.
How come?
Because I get to see what Luxon said over the weekend.
And
then I get to get all excited about jumping on tonight and going, so, this guy be our future Prime Minister, and see what's going on.
Hey, crazy old time, people. Crazy old time. Should be a goodie tonight. Yeah. Hello. Crazy old time. I'm not entirely sure how to address this, Chewy. I said I'm going to do it at the end of the show, but I feel like explaining it at the start of the show. How do I say this? You people who watch the show, watch what we've been doing, know that this has been a big week coming up for me. There's a particular birthday coming up, which will be fun on some levels. A big party happening on Friday night, which has all somewhat been derailed because we being the Brittenden family are on the precipice. Is that the right word, Chewy? The edge?
It's a good word. It's a $5 word.
Okay. Of a family bereavement, which hasn't happened yet, but is imminent due to the health of someone. And so just a real clear heads up to everybody. I will probably be traveling to Auckland tomorrow, and I don't know what's going to be happening with the show. I can see the lovely Free Soul is in the chat, and I've been talking to Free Soul today, and we might end up doing something where Free Soul helps us a little bit with some producing, meaning some locating of stories, because there's a very high probability that I will be spending Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday next week, maybe Tuesday next week, ensconced in admin and organisational stuff surrounding a patriarchal member of the Brittenden family who is still with us, but probably not for long. So we may not be here tomorrow night. So not to make it all heavy and too serious, I need a fart joke or something quite quickly, Chewy. There you go. But I really appreciate this community we're building. On some level, the work that I put in to put the show together, that me and Chewy do together, I know it's valued by people, and I don't just want to disappear for 10 days. I also know, much like when I have my operation, you guys will probably go, just go, it's fine. And I know it would be fine as well, but I also think what we're doing is important, and I enjoy it. So I'm going to take some of my gear, my laptop and a portable mic that I've got to Auckland with me. And I don't know whether I'll be in Auckland tomorrow or on Wednesday, probably one of those 2 days. If I'm in Dunedin tomorrow, we'll do this again like this. Obviously Wednesday is my birthday. And then probably between Thursday and next Wednesday, I'm not entirely sure what the show's going to look like. So just wanted to give you a heads up. Now, what it is going to mean is things are going to be more difficult to do, things like editing clips and that kind of stuff. I'll have some gear with me, but at the moment I'm sitting in front of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens. And it's very easy to edit in this place. When I've got my 14-inch MacBook, it's a bit more difficult. So we'll see how that all works, but we'll definitely, hopefully, over some of the nights be delivering you this show, albeit looking slightly different and probably sounding slightly different. Not the content, obviously, Chewy, just literally how it sounds and looks. And then we'll see what happens with the rest. I don't know. If I might find it quite a lovely distraction, to be honest. I might make a whole bunch of clips, more clips than you've ever seen before. More clips, and there's stars in the sky, Chewy. We'll wait and see. So I know I've been a little bit, I don't know if I have been a little bit sort of secretive about the whole thing. I'm only because I can't make an announcement because things haven't happened yet. They're just imminent. I'm sure those of you with elderly people in your family know what I'm talking about. Imminent. So there you go. Here we go. Now, on a lighter note, Christopher Luxon screwing up New Zealand.
Oh my God. So good.
Yeah. So listen. So tonight we've got a quote unquote normal show, and we will be getting into it. I have to tell you that I watched the Q&A show. Thank you, JK, for the super chat there. Super chat from JK. Appreciate that. The Q&A show the interview was 26 minutes, and honestly, we could have just done the show reviewing the 26 minutes. Like, we could have just done the full 26 minutes, and I've edited down clips, and I think I'm still at about 16 minutes. So there's a lot there to get through. So we don't have a lot of time to get through it all. I mean, to get to waste too much time, meandering about, Pat's life. So we will get into it. And probably what we'll do is we won't give other stories enough time tonight. Like, we could probably do half the show on RNZ and the pro Gremlin information. Gremlin and Gremlin too. That water and eat after midnight, that's terrible. But the pro Kremlin information coming out of there, which in and of itself could be a whole show, actually, easily. And also the Greens' new tax policy, I think it's really worth talking about. We're going to give it a little bit of time tonight, but there'll be other things we don't give. I mean, maybe if we do another show tomorrow night, if we're here or not, maybe we'll pick up on some of these things and have them in more detail. But just really quickly, Chewy, let's just spend 2 minutes on RNZ, because here's one thought that I did think about thinking. And that's, I remember a friend of mine once had a little kid, their child, one of their children, who had fell off a trampoline and had a funny fracture in their arm, right? And when the fracture turned up to the doctor actually obviously didn't tell them, but they recognized the fracture as the kind of fracture a kid would get when they've been hit with something. Like, it's a typical fracture that an abused child would get. So my friend, the family was reported to what was then called SIFs, and they came out and they did an inspection of this family, and it was all fine. And my friend got a little bit upset about it and was like, we're good people. And I'm like, yeah, but on some level, the system worked, because the doctor saw something that they thought could be, they investigated it, and you're all clear. And imagine if it was the other way. Imagine if the doctor saw it and didn't report it and it was abuse. Now, I'm relating this to the RNZ thing because it feels like, Chewy, on some level, the system worked, because it's not a group who's trying to push pro-Kremlin propaganda, and they caught up with it and they're correcting it, as opposed to other media outlets that will just keep doing it even if it's pointed out to them. So on some level, not to actually negate what's happened, which is really serious, but on some level the system still works. That's just something I thought about over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'd rather not have to have that praise, Pat, and that was just business as usual and nothing bad has happened. I think there is some really bad stuff. Apparently this guy has been adding his own editorial flair onto online articles for upwards of a year. It doesn't seem to be particularly like I was doing it in secret. From what I've heard recently today is that he keenly follows Russia Today. He's got some very clear leanings, and the people have been sort of questioning some of the stories that he's been putting up online for approximately 8 months. And
although he did
nobody's
come out
caught
today,
it till now.
He did come out today saying he's been doing it for a long time and he's never been questioned. Although RNZ is saying they challenged that statement. That we don't know about that yet. I know that the head of RNZ basically come out and talked about pro-Kremlin garbage that's been making its way through.
Very strong.
The other thing, it is only, not that it makes it okay, but it is only the online content. None of this has become editorial of the actual broadcasts. It's an editor who's done it. Now, what'll be interesting to figure out is it a plant? Is it a psyop? Is it someone who's just been putting spins on it with no agenda? Is it a pro-Kremlin? You know what I mean? Like, that'll be interesting to figure out and to try and find out as they go through this process.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not inclined to believe anything that he or they choose to say at this point.
They being RNZ?
I think no. This person that's
The
been
person, right?
sprung. I feel like if they're going to come forward and say, "Oh, well, I've been doing it for 5 years, and nobody even noticed," wow,
Yeah, I do think that too.
They're just really making their hopefully former employer look really bad on the way out.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's that. I think, I don't know anyone at RNZ, but I would imagine the feeling there is just people being furious that this has happened because it's damaged a brand, it's damaged their perception, and I'm sure that there's the cookers out there that are like, see, the media's corrupt, even though we agree with this guy, but see,
Well, the other thing is, if you were there, I know a few people there. I know Wallace Chapman, and some others as well. Is the thing that I would also be questioning if I was working there is where the fuck are the management level? Like, how has this person just done this so often? Like, yes, why has this happened and why has this person done it? But hi, what about the next layer of editorial kind of fact checking or just checking in? How has that happened? So maybe what it's going to do is maybe it's going to make it in the long term an actual better and stronger product because they're going to have to put more things in place to make sure this never happens again. And you might find that it actually helps in the long run. Potentially.
I have seen the best and most thorough reporting about it has been by RNZ, which is unusual. It feels like, oh, do you guys not want to keep this quiet in some way? And they're like, no, burn the witch.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's got to instill some confidence.
Yeah, well, that's true, though, as well. I mean, I can't imagine a whole bunch of other people with airing. Like, I can actually remember working at ZB, and I can remember when the Tony Veach thing happened. The Tony Veach situation, and we were up against radio. We weren't really up against Radio Live, but we were told not to talk about it. I remember the phone call coming in. It was about Bruce Russell was doing a Friday night show before I came on, and the phone call came through. I was there waiting to come on and do my show, and they went. It was a Friday night. I remember that, and they went, "You can talk about it now." So there was absolutely, ZB did not want that topic going on air for a portion of time. All the time, Willie and JT were going hard nuts on it over on Radio Live, probably doing their ratings. They probably went from a 1.3 to a 1.7 at that time. So yeah, so like you say, I mean, these are the guys who are front footing it and saying, yeah, this sucks and this is bad and we need to figure out why, as opposed to, quashing it.
Yeah, and I guess for those that haven't seen what we're talking about here, it's just basically someone's taking copy from Reuters or overseas wire services and basically just putting their own little editorial slant on it.
Can you show us?
I've got an example. Oh, it's a very tiny example that I will make bigger. So on the left-hand side, you can see the original copy, which says the conflict in eastern Ukraine began in 2014 after pro-Russian president was toppled in Ukraine's, I think it's Maidan revolution, and Russia annexed Crimea with Russian-backed separatist forces fighting Ukraine's armed forces. A pretty objective telling of the timeline there.
Yeah.
And then on the right-hand side, what RNZ put up online with the conflict in Ukraine began in 2014 after a pro-Russian elected government was toppled during Ukraine's violent Maidan Color Revolution. Russia annexed Crimea after a referendum as the new pro-Western government suppressed ethnic Russians in eastern and southern Ukraine, sending in its armed forces into the Donbass, which is very much a Kremlin timeline and talking point.
I mean, I can't imagine. Okay, we got to be careful here, I guess, in theory. But my personal opinion is I can't imagine that's anything other than being fed from Russia. I mean, it's just so... perfect. It's not someone going, oh, I know a little bit about this and I've done a bit of Googling and yeah, this works. It looks so spot on for, as you say, Russian talking points. It's going to be really interesting.
The timeline is fucking cooked. The idea that there was a referendum and then Russia went in is just a fallacy. They were there and then they had a referendum and surprise, they want us to stay. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. All right, let's keep trucking. That was our 7 or 8 minute, 2-minute chat about that. So that doesn't bode well for a show. Let's have a look at the Greens and their announcement over wealth taxes and more.
The Green Party has unveiled its first big policy announcement of election season, tax. Specifically, more of it, from the top to the bottom.
Yes.
A new guaranteed minimum income could see individuals who are out of work or studying pocket $385 a week after tax. Couples will get $770, and a single parent entitled to at least $735 a week. The plan would be phased in over 2 years, and to pay for it, the Greens would bring in a wealth tax, 2.5% on assets worth more than $4 million for couples or $2 million for individuals.
Here's my one question, Joey. Maybe you've heard this, or maybe someone in the chat's heard this. That's what we love about you guys. My only question about this, because I'm on board, yeah, completely and utterly. But my only question is, we see elderly retired people in places like Auckland who bought their house in 1973 for $1.50 and a shoestring, and now it's worth $2.6 million, and they're getting priced out of the market because they can't even afford the rates. So whilst the concept I agree with, the devil is always in the detail, I'd like to know what this means for some 82-year-old, widow who is now sitting on a $2.3 million house in Auckland because of that. What does that mean if they're like on a set income, if they're a pensioner, if it's whatever. And I'm not saying that to be like, so therefore fuck it all. I'm like, that's the only question I have with this whole thing. I haven't heard an answer to that. Maybe you have too. Maybe someone has. You can bring it into this conversation.
So what was it? What was your marker there?
Well, like if
a retired couple with how much?
No, like a retired person who's sitting in a $2.1 million house because they bought it in 1977 for $28,000 and it's in Remuera, and that's just what it's worth. Like a widow or a widower.
So $2 million in assets, nothing to pay.
Yeah, but 2.1, 2.5, whatever.
Well, I mean, if they had $3 million, it would be about $25,000 to pay. So I think just a touch over $2 million. So it's
2.5% above that amount. But still, that's my only question. And look, the numbers might all work. Well, this is one of my questions: do the numbers work? But that's my only question. And some of these people who are getting priced out of their houses because of rates, or also they're getting rate rebates. Is that going to be a similar thing with this? If it are someone who genuinely is, as they say, asset rich but financially poor, because of your age, is there a rebate system for those people? That's all I'm asking, and I'm not saying so therefore it doesn't work. I'm just literally asking that question, wondering. That's it.
I think certainly the reaction I've seen on Twitter is showing, like, for people that are anti this. I've seen two flavors of comment, and that is basically people who don't understand how fractional tax works, and they just think they're going to get taxed on the whole amount. Yep, which is not true. And those that seem to think that the Greens are lying somehow, and of course they're going to tax middle New Zealand, and it's not. I think they're being quite clear, and I think there's been some tax experts come out and go, yes, this seems to be a particularly workable plan. I've seen some sock puppet accounts basically repeating word for word the same posts. So, the guys that are running sock puppet accounts are really going hard on it. They do not like it, which really suggests to me that the Greens are onto a winner here.
All right, let's keep going.
The party would also implement a new top tax rate of 45% on incomes of more than $180,000. And the corporate tax rate would lift as well to 33%. That's the stick. Here's the carrot. For anyone earning under $125,000, there'd be a tax-free threshold of $10,000. The Greens are hoping this will win them back some ailing support. To hear why, we're joined now by party co-leader James Shaw. Mr. Shaw, how did you decide that asking people to pay more money would get you more votes?
What a stupid question.
Well, as you said, actually 95%.
What a stupid question. She's basically saying the only reason you're doing this policy is to get more votes. Ridiculous question.
3.7 million New Zealanders will actually pay less tax under this proposal. And the wealth tax that you mentioned only applies to 0.7% of the country. And so what we're saying is we actually have an opportunity to end child poverty in this country once and for all. And that should be the mark of a civilised society. And we think a more progressive tax system in which the majority of people get a bit of a break to help them through tough times, whilst asking those who have most amongst us to be able to contribute a wee bit more.
I'm not saying it's not a good ambition to have, but is there any country in the world that has seriously been able to eradicate child poverty?
You imagine that question about like being nuclear free or something like that. Come on, is there any country?
Oh, no
in
one
the
else has
world,
done it.
Is there
Why
any
bother?
other country in the world that's done that? I mean, like women with the vote. Like, has there been any other country in the world? Like, what a stupid question.
Well, we are the only country in the OECD, the only country that does not have a wealth tax, a capital gains tax, a stamp duty, inheritance taxes, or some combination of all of those things. We have done a good job over the course of the last 6 years of this government in lifting about 30,000 children above the material hardship line. There's about another 45,000 children who are still below that material hardship line, and what we're saying is, why not everyone? The cost of this package is about $10 billion a year, and that's about half what we spend on superannuation. So we think it's ambitious, but it is realistic within the next parliament.
The polling figures show, though, your support is lagging, and it's the right that is picking up voters. So what is it about this policy that you think is
Not
going
picking them up
to
for
win
Greens.
over the support?
It's
that you
strange,
need?
isn't it? Isn't it a strange interview? I mean, Anna Burns Francis is sometimes like very good, very astute, and sometimes just like all the questions are based around why do you think this is going to get you a vote? I mean, if that's how any political party works, why would you ever do it? I mean, the way I would think it is the vote is almost a byproduct. You would hope. Actually, I'm being naive saying that. Sometimes it's not. But the vote is almost a byproduct in an ideal world. You put forward policies that you think are going to be good, and if the country agrees with you, they join it on board. Now, it is naive because we are obviously aware that people do absolutely, vote get with their policies. But I don't know. It just seems that the idea of going, why do you think this will get you votes? Rather than
I'm not mental,
why do you think this will work?
I'm not mental. If Greens pick up votes, they pick them up from the left section of people who voted for Labour. And if the right picks up votes, then they pick them up from the right, the centre right that voted for Labour last time. It's not like people going, oh, I don't like this Greens tax policies. I'm going to vote for ACT.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. The framing of the question is very odd.
Yeah, anyway.
Most times we have you on that Green Party needs more people in government to get what you want pushed through. How are you going to get those voters back?
Well, I mean, our polling on average is actually higher now than it was on election night 2020. But the point here is that we're laying out a positive vision for the country where we actually bring everybody with us and we leave no one behind. And in this election, we think that if people want to live in a society where we do look after each other and that those who need our support the most receive that support when they need that support, then we're putting something on the table and saying, look, this should be the mark of a civilised society, and it should be a measure of any political party that they do have a plan to eliminate poverty in Aotearoa.
So we'll leave it there for this part of the conversation. We do have a lot going on. I do want to also say, and this is my question, right? My question to whether we're talking to Christopher Luxon or Nicola Willis or David Seymour is, do the Greens numbers work? Like, that's what I want to know. I don't want to know, do you agree with the policy? I want to know, do the Greens numbers work? John Key has been quoted over the weekend as being not a fan of the recent IRD report, which showed that while wealthy New Zealanders pay more tax overall, they pay lower tax rates than other earners. Key said the analysis was, quote, so pathetic that he doesn't see why it was published, and lambasted the idea that all of New Zealand's problems can be blamed on the rich, which is, of course, is the sob story of the wealthy, because that's not what anyone's saying. But
does he have a vested interest in that? Maybe.
Somehow. But my question to John Key is, do these numbers work? Because if the numbers work and they say we don't like them, we don't like the policy, then what you're saying is this is a solution. We just don't like the solution you've come up with. Now, if the numbers don't work, that's another conversation. So my question to any of these right-wing politicians is, do the Greens numbers work? I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm not saying you have to actually buy on board to it, but do the numbers work that they're talking about? Will they generate enough tax with these numbers to be able to do what they want to do? And if the answer is yes, then it's a bit like, well, they've got an answer. What's yours?
Yeah, John Key's worth about $60 million. So I think he might think it's so pathetic because he might have to do something for this country.
Yeah.
And pay his fair share. I mean, Max Key's worth $5 million apparently.
Wow.
So
from his DJing.
Certainly not his podcast, probably his house flipping. But you know, I mean, those guys are the perfect example of what we're talking about. Like, Max Key has made his money flipping houses, and just non-productive assets. I've heard
that phrase in the last few days. Non-productive. Yeah,
assets. It's funny that it's drilled into my brain, and I love the fact that this conversation is happening, because it's not saying that people can't invest. It's just saying invest in something that makes something that produces something here in New Zealand. We can't keep making money by selling old houses to each other. You know, Luxon has said we're an unproductive country, among other things, recently. But that's part of it. But he won't clear the field for people to invest in businesses and in ideas. It's remarkably short-sighted.
Yeah. Yep. And we're going to get onto those unproductive assets shortly with some particular questions from Q&A. Let's move on to the next part of this conversation, though. And I didn't plan for this to be heavily laboured at the feet of, it sounds weird, labour, but at the feet of National. But we want to hear from Nicola Willis as well, who was on not Q&A, but News Hub Nation over the weekend. And had some really interesting things to say. The interviewer here at News Hub Nation wants to know why National still sucks. Like, if Labor's so bad, why are you guys doing so poorly?
Politically, this has been a free hit for National. It's not the first been served up by a Labor minister, granted, this year. You would expect a polling bump from this, but the race is really super tight. I don't understand why National isn't doing better.
Well, this, I think, goes to competence and what New Zealanders want to see right now.
It does.
Sure, so why isn't National doing better if it's about competence?
Well, I think what New Zealanders want to see is solutions to the massive problems facing our country. And the problems that are facing our country are a record cost of living, law and order out of control.
So why aren't you doing better in the polls with the Prime Minister's favoured Prime Minister?
Hospital system in crisis, schools where kids aren't attending. And what I want to be doing each week
so many lies
is talking about those issues. And this week, as much as we were prosecuting Michael Wood, it's our role as the opposition, I wasn't getting to talk about those issues.
Well, that's right.
I'd much prefer to talk about them.
So if those are the things that you believe the electorate wants to hear about, why isn't Christopher Luxon, who's on 17 to 18% preferred Prime Minister, not ahead of Chris Hipkins on all these things? I mean, this is a golden opportunity for National. I don't understand, is he dragging the polling down?
No, I don't think so. I think what this comes back to, as I say, is New Zealanders desperately want to hear solutions to the country's problems. So the goal that we...
I have to say, when we watch Jack Tame on Q&A, you can see the difference in the quality of the interviewer, because she's not answering the question. She's going to the national talking points. Now, it's not actually a criticism necessarily, because that's what politicians are supposed to do. But you wait, if you haven't seen Q&A yet, you wait till the conversation where you see Jack Tame hold Christopher Luxon's feet to the fire.
Have in the National Party is to take opportunities to communicate how we think we can fix those issues. So that's what campaigns are all about. Sure. We're looking forward to doing that over the next few weeks.
The only comparison I have really is, again, John Key, who...
So he's just left that talking point alone. He's gone on to his next question, because there's number 3 question needs to come out as well.
4 months out from the 2008 election, was on about 38% approved Prime Minister ratings, you know. Christopher Luxon's nowhere near that.
Well, look...
That must be disappointing.
But what determines the shape of the government is our party vote. And what we can see from New Zealanders, that they hear our message, they want a change of government, they do think the country's going in the wrong direction, and our job is to grow our support to do that. Our caucus know that Chris Luxon will make an excellent Prime Minister. And I meet people every week who agree with us and who know that he has what it takes. He'll have what it takes to get things done, to sort out the economy, to get this place going.
All right, I understand.
So the most telling comment there, Drew, I don't know if you picked up on it, was our caucus knows he will be an excellent Prime Minister. Our caucus knows But the interviewer missed the opportunity to go, yeah, but New Zealand doesn't know, because that's why he's polling so poorly, and New Zealanders en masse don't trust him. Our caucus knows. That doesn't matter. New Zealanders have to know, and they currently don't, Chewy.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we've been saying all along. He's not making any headway.
Yeah. Although National is. Maybe this will be if National and ACT get in, maybe this will be the first election run kind of in modern history where people haven't voted for the leader. Now, I know that we don't elect a president here, but people voted for Jacinda. They voted for Helen Clark. They voted for John Key. That's who they voted for, right? Maybe this will be the first election in history where they vote for National as opposed to, like, in spite of Luxon rather than for Luxon.
Can I also mention Nicola's opening statements here of all the problems plaguing the country?
Yeah.
Most of them are lies. Just straight up lies. Like, they're talking about the rise in crime rate. Crime is down. They're talking about, the truancy epidemic that they were talking about, earlier in the year. We've looked at that on this show and torn that apart.
Yeah.
Like, it's just talking points, and it's just again, the interviewer is just letting them put this message out there.
Yeah.
And it's the perception takes hold, and it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. And that's where National's gone with this.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't know, and we'll show you shortly and look, I'm not trying to be a Jack Tame fanboy here, but we'll show you how to do it shortly. Let's have a look at one more part of this clip, which is why isn't Luxon resonating with women? That's the gist of this conversation.
You mean the broodmares?
Yeah, the ones that should be having more babies who are going to pay for their contraception, and being asked by a man who thinks abortion is tantamount to murder. Here we go.
I mean, why isn't he resonating?
Look, I think that he does resonate with many women. I think our job, as always, is to communicate with women how our policies and our leadership will make their lives, their families' lives, their communities' lives better. And that's what we want to be focused on.
Polling admittedly done from March by Roy Morgan showed that 52% of women favour a Labor-Greens coalition and 52% of men favour a National ACT. Is National failing to connect with and bring those women over the line because you just don't have that many women on the front bench? I mean, there's you and there's 3 others.
Oh, we've got incredible women in the National Party team, but would I like to see more women supporting our party? Absolutely. When I look down our front bench and I see me, I see Erica Stanford, I see Louise Upston, we've got real talent.
But you don't have depth.
So that's
I think we
3.
do have depth because
Depth
I
in
know
numbers.
the candidates that are coming through. I know the members of parliament that contribute hugely to our team. I look at our president, Sylvia Wood.
Okay, so this is not a concern for you leading into the election that you may have trouble resonating with women?
As I've said, do I want to grow the women vote? Absolutely, yes I do, and that is something that
And do you
we
think
are
you can do that with
focused on.
Christopher Luxon as leader?
Yes, I do.
There you go. So
I noticed that
women are totes into Christopher Luxon, according to Nicola Willis.
She left off some key female national MPs there. I wonder why.
Oh, yeah. I wonder why.
How far down the list do you have to go before you get to Kruger?
So, I mean, yeah, it was. I don't know. What would you do in politics if you were in politics? It was a shoddy attempt at an interview, and I was thinking about this because I guess we got to be careful. I don't want to, because someone might watch something we do and think the same sort of thing. We're going to always be hampered by the idea of doing stuff on the internet because, Chewy, you'll know this. Sometimes when you're talking, I can't come in across the top of you because there's a system that's set up and vice versa. And if we had a political leader with us, it's going to be quite hard to cut them off, which is why typically I let people talk and then come in afterwards. The problem with politicians is they go, yes, I've got 33 minutes at this time at this date, and that's why these sorts of things happen. But it just, I don't know, it just kind of smacked of, I don't know, you know how the bully at school never claims to be the bully? Like they just say the polar opposite. No, I've never hit someone, I'm not a bully. Or the racist never claims they're a racist because I've got a Māori friend or whatever. It's like the party that's struggling with women vote are like, no, sweet ass. We're all good. No, we'd like more, but we're all good. I heard something the other day, and look, I'm probably wrong on this fact because I've done a bit of a looking around for it and I can't find it. so maybe I shouldn't even mention it, but maybe someone in the chat has seen it. I heard that there was some recent research that said 1 in 5 women under 50 are voting National. Now, I've done some research. I've tried to find that, and I haven't been able to, but I've heard it come from multiple people at multiple different times. So if anyone knows that research, if anyone's seen it, we'll definitely put it up there. Because if that's the case, then that spells real trouble. If it's not the case, then that's hashtag fake news. Anyway.
Do you... I mean, if you had to go, oh, we've got a lot of female talent in the National Party, who would you mention?
Erica Stanford.
Okay.
And actually,
any other high-profile women that spring to mind in the National
To her credit,
Party?
Nicola Willis is someone who we said it for a while that she was going to be the leader and she was going to overtake things. So there's a few there, yeah.
Okay. I just find it interesting that she can only find 3 people that she wants to mention, one of them being herself.
Yeah.
So there we go. Nicola Willis.
Yep.
And 4 dudes.
Yep.
And then we go down. Oh, look, there's... Okay, so we got Erica Stanford.
Louise Upston.
We got Louise Upston. She mentioned those 2.
Yeah.
Right? Oh.
Judith.
We're not going to mention Judith.
Melissa Lee.
Who is... Yeah. It's a lot of dudes there. Got this
Penny
person.
Simmons?
Penny.
Don't know who that is.
Barbara Kruger and Maureen. Well, maybe want to leave those names off. And Nicola Gregg.
I wonder how Nicola feels about being right next to Sam Muffindale in that picture.
Oh, Hapango. There's probably another one you don't want to bring people's...
Jackie Dean's way down there. Is this alphabetical or is this their list? Because Jackie Dean is... She's been...
I assume that there's this list, but I think Jackie Dean is retiring this year.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. I mean, I'm surprised. Like, if that was going to be a question that she knew was coming, or even if she didn't know it was coming, she could have had a fair guess at the question of why aren't women voters jiving with what Luxon's selling. Wouldn't it be great just to be able to rattle off all of your female MPs without going, myself and 2 of my friends?
Well, and she also said, because I know the candidates coming up, meaning the people who aren't in our party right now haven't won, they're all going to be amazing when they don't win their local seats either.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep trucking because, as I said, there's a lot of this next interview to go, and actually get your popcorn because it's worth fucking watching. That's for sure.
If you guys haven't seen this is spectacular.
I wonder actually if this is the last time we'll see Christopher Luxon on Q&A, because the last clip that we've used from Q&A was from last year, where Jack Tame got him to admit that his tax cuts would cause the same amount of inflation as what was happening right now.
Yes.
Do you remember that one?
Yes,
so
that was great.
So Luxon was there criticising the inflation numbers, and Jack Tame drilled down into his tax cuts and got him to admit, yes, it would be the same. Well, it wouldn't be any worse. It would be the same. So I don't know why Luxon goes on, because it never seems to go so well for him. So let's have a look.
He's not good at this.
Let's have a look at. Let's start having a look at some of these clips. Now, some of these are quite long. I don't know how long we'll just let them roll and how much will come in and out of them. I don't know. So this was an example. Here's an example. As much as the answers from Christopher Luxon, it's worth watching what Jack Tame does here. This whole idea about what they're going to do with GE. They're going to open it up for more research and make GE more available. Yada yada yada. So Jack Tame wants to ask him about the risks. So the question he's asking is, what risks does opening up our agricultural sector to more GE product and more gene splitting? What are the risks that he's not even saying what would it do? He would like, if you're looking over the whole equation of pros and cons, what are some of the risks that we need to be careful of? This is the basis of this question.
I suppose the risks are different. What do you perceive are the biggest risks?
Well, look, I think I actually see huge upside for New Zealand.
What's the risk, though?
Well, the risks we can mitigate and we can safeguard really clearly.
Risks?
Well, what we're going to make sure is we've got a biotech regulator that is there to safeguard any implications.
Now, quickly on this point, I'm not going to cut in and out too much here, but on this point, he says this about a biotech regulator. That's a bureaucrat. That's a layer of bureaucracy. Now, it's the National Party who keep telling us bureaucrats are ruining the world, but his solution to doing this safely is a bureaucratic layer. I don't get that. And that's actually one point that Jack didn't pick up on. It's like, You guys are the ones who are saying fewer bureaucrats, fewer public servants, but the way you're going to solve the risks is by having more public servants.
Pat, it's just one dude. We're just going to get one guy.
Like that one guy who was looking at all those oil drilling platforms in the Gulf of Mexico.
Actually, it's the same guy.
Same guy. He's looking for a new job. All right. So remember, he's asking about the risks, and he's not even telling them that it wouldn't work. He's saying, what are the? So give us a list of the risks. What are they? Like if you start up an oil platform, one of the risks that's not going to happen, but one of the risks is spilling oil into the ocean. What are the risks for this? So he's looking for actual tangible things that National should have gone through when they've done their pros and cons, when they've done their case study.
For humans, make sure animal welfare is maintained, and make sure that our environment's protected. And that's a model that we're following off the Australian model, where they have a gene technology regulator. And we want to make sure that we're not being reckless, we're being really smart, we're being quite conservative, have a very dedicated regulator. Some OECD countries have very limited regulation around GE, but actually we want to make sure we're on the conservative end of that spectrum.
So back to my question, what are the biggest risks?
Well, I don't see any risks. I think the risks can be managed incredibly well.
So there's no risk.
The risks can be managed incredibly well through a regulator.
Because there's none.
Hang on. The risks can be managed well, but there are no risks. But if there's no risks,
why they're being able to...
hang on. But if there's no risks, you wouldn't need a regulator. Why do you need a regulator to mitigate the risks if you see no risks? What are the risks? He's not very good at this.
The tigers are completely safe to be around, and that's why we've built a cage.
Yeah, but
which we don't need.
I see no risks with a tiger in their teeth. We'll keep going, shall we?
There are risks, though, right?
There are risks, and each application.
So what do you think are the biggest risks?
Well, each application comes to a regulator for consideration. It goes out for a 30-day submission.
Not answering my question, though. What are the biggest risks?
Well, it depends on the technologies, right? And that's why you want a panel of scientists.
So in a New Zealand context, and I know there will be particular interest around the use of genetic modification or genetic editing technologies, around the use of things that might help our emissions profile when it comes to agriculture, for example.
Absolutely.
So what would be the biggest risks in that context, do you think?
Well, I don't see any risks on that. I see huge upside for New Zealand. I see the biggest risk is us actually not adopting our technologies and getting them up to speed and dragging New Zealand into the 21st century. That's the much bigger risk.
Are there any occasions in which the introduction of GMOs has had unintended consequences?
Is it almost painful?
I mean, there's a lot of people
scaremongering
saying, is there crop contamination?
Except for the one Jack's about to mention.
Times the land size of New Zealand planted.
But after he mentions it, it's still never happened.
No contamination. There's organic producers, say in California, they've never lost their licenses. That doesn't happen.
In Oregon, I see a genetically modified grass seed escaped its containment area and spread over quite a large area, effectively threatening $1 billion industry.
Yeah, but what I'd say to you really clearly is that's a very good example to me, which is that here we have a piece of research in New Zealand. Ag Research developed a ryegrass. It actually has a 23% lower emissions profile and is much more drought resistant. That technology is developed here in New Zealand but can't be trialled outside of the lab, and as a result is taken to the US for trials. That's a tool or a technology we desperately need to do in order to meet our climate goals that we've got and to deal with agricultural emissions, which is a real challenge for New Zealand.
But I asked you before if there are any occasions when the introduction of GMOs has had unintended consequences, and you acknowledge there are.
Well, no, what I'd say to you is...
I just gave you an example.
Well, there are risks, but what I'm saying is those risks are going to be incredibly managed conservatively with a good regulator. But the bigger risk is that we are getting well left behind.
Right.
Not solving
but also
the
there's
problem.
no risk.
You're just not acknowledging my question there. You're not answering the question I'm asking, which is, do you acknowledge there have been unintended consequences in the past with the introduction of GMOs?
I personally, Jack, I do not feel that the risks are outweigh the benefits.
Do you acknowledge there have been unintended consequences?
There may have been, but I cannot think of any examples of crop contamination. I cannot think of any examples.
Except for the one I just gave you.
The GM DNA comes through in meat, eggs or milk. I can tell you that doesn't happen.
My God.
We make sure we've got safeguards on animal welfare and obviously on human embryonics and as well. So
I almost feel bad for him. That's a hard thing to say, but it's almost painful to watch. Like, do you honestly think he'll ever go back on Q&A? Can he? There's no risk.
I would say
there's no risk, but
insane.
there's no risk, but we're going to have a regulator to mitigate the risks. It's never happened anywhere except for the example you just gave, and the bigger risk is that we're not going to make enough money. I think I just nutshelled it.
Jake asked 7 times The only time I've ever seen someone more evasive than that is in court footage. But yeah, it's insane. Like you wouldn't have a conversation with a normal person like that where you're asking a question. This person's just prevaricating for you to say it 7 more times without answer. And like, you can mention risk. Like if you're talking about, oh, we're going to mitigate risks. Well, to mitigate risks, you need to know what the risks are. Otherwise, you're just fucking guessing.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I want to hear about GMO in a small agricultural country like New Zealand.
Yeah, I obviously can't play all of it. There was another point where basically Jack said, and he wasn't saying it as an absolute, but there are many scientists who say that this is a genie out of the bottle moment. My analogy, not his, that once it's here, there's no going back. Like, it's not like you can contain it within the and it's like once it's here permanently. So it's actually more than just let's give this a go. It's actually, it's like once there's a nuclear reactor here, we are no longer nuclear free. You know, it's here. We don't get rid of it. Like once this happens, it's here. So
like for a lot of our markets, the premium that we can get for our products because we don't do these things is potentially massive. And then the moment that we've left the gate open a little bit, it goes away. So I understand the hesitancy. Let someone else do the hard yards.
All right, second clip we're going to play for Yaz. For Yaz is actually talking about their backtrack on emissions, their emission scheme, and it's actually asking about the agricultural industry. Are they going to be the people under National to set the emissions prices? Right? Insane. Are they going to be the ones that actually do it? Because at the moment the government's doing it, and the agricultural sector doesn't want it. And under National, are the agricultural sector going to be setting the price for emissions? And this is our conversation.
Now, you say that He Waka Eke Noa is dead, at least at the moment, and that the government should return to the industry plan, allowing the industry to essentially set prices for emissions on farms. So to be clear, does National think the agriculture industry should be responsible for setting the price of emissions?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about that, and I have more to say about that in the coming week.
Just to answer that question.
No, but I want to be really clear, because...
Be clear and please answer that question.
The National Party is very committed to net carbon zero 2050. Yes. We're the government that put New Zealand into the Paris Agreement in 2050.
And you're still committed to the Zero Carbon Act?
Deeply committed to the Carbon Zero Act.
You won't back out of that act?
No. We are deeply committed
so back to that
goals.
Question. Does National... hang on a second. Does National think the agriculture industry should be responsible for setting the price of emissions?
What we believe is we should work with the agriculture industry to do exactly that.
So you think that the agriculture industry should be the ones doing it?
We think that they can work with government and agriculture
together. That's
waffle
talk?
No, but partnership's important.
Okay, yes. No, everyone agrees partnership's important.
Well,
but ultimately,
no, they don't. This government hasn't done that.
So are you saying that if government sets the price, the agriculture industry doesn't agree, that's it, it won't happen?
I will talk more about our specifics of the policy.
That's a very simple question.
No, but I can give you some principles to say, first and foremost, we have been very supportive of the industry developing a pricing regime for agricultural emissions. There is no doubt about it. The status quo is not acceptable. Our customers will be demanding it in the future, and so change is needed. Fully agree with that. The government blew it up. They actually killed it off big time.
Well, there are two differences between the government's He Waka Eke Noa position and the industries, right? One is around sequestration and whether or not effectively what is described as temporary planting should be included, and the other is around who should set the price. The government says the government should set the price. The industry says the industry should set the price. I want to know your position, industry or government.
The government killed any consensus that was existing in the industry by actually saying they're going to move production out of the most carbon efficient producers in the world to other countries to make New Zealand poorer and to destroy livelihoods.
Out of interest,
we're not interested
from
in
a
that.
principal perspective, would you let alcohol companies set the alcohol excise tax?
No, but what we're saying here is we're going to partner with the sector to work it out together.
Great question.
That is not what this government has been doing. So our principles are very simple. Change has to happen because the status quo is not acceptable. We will partner with the government, with the sector to do it. We will make sure that we actually have all the tools and technologies, which is where biotech changes come into.
Okay.
And we need to make sure there is no leakage. We're not interested in destroying livelihoods here in New Zealand and moving production offshore.
Right.
New Zealand farmers feed 40 million people around the world. Moving that production, which has to be met by another country or another farm,
the risk
doesn't
that
change
leakage
global
presents
greenhouse
is
gas
actually
emissions.
is very contested. But anyway, we'll move.
So, and maybe we'll just roll straight into the next clip, Chewy, because the next clip is actually talking more about emissions. and it's talking about national policies to reduce climate emissions. Let's play this because it kind of dovetails into the one we've just heard, and then we'll get to a bit of a chat about what we've heard. So this is about national policies to reduce climate emissions.
I mean, I look at the New Zealand Wind Energy Association. It says many consented projects are currently on hold as the developer waits for market conditions and demand for renewable electricity to increase to make the wind farms commercially available. So with that in mind, if you need to induce demand for renewable sources of energy, let's look at your policies. You will allow cities to sprawl, leading to higher emissions, which is something that Chris Bishop acknowledged to us on the last Q&A. You will scrap incentives for electric vehicles. You will scrap the light rail project still?
Yeah, I think light rail at $30 billion is a huge
So
waste
you'll
of time.
scrap the biggest rapid transit project in New Zealand history. You want to let our biggest emitting sector potentially set its own emissions pricing or hand in hand with government, and you will restart oil and gas exploration. How can anyone take the National Party serious on climate change?
The means by which we deliver our goals, the goals will be
Pretty
very
good
different.
question.
We are deeply committed to the outcomes and the goals, make no mistake about that. But it doesn't mean that the government's approach is the only way to do that. We've been in a perverse situation. If you take each
It sounds like it's kind of like saying, you know, I've got to get to Auckland in the next few days. I'm going to fly. Chewie, you could get on a boat and go around the western coast of Australia and get to Auckland. You know, it doesn't mean that Pat's solution is the only solution. Both of us will get to Auckland, Chewie. We've just got a different way of doing it. That's how it sort of feels. That's what that response means to me. I'll get on a plane and I'll be there in 2 hours. I'll see you in December. Chewie, but we'll both get there. We'll both get to the same outcome. We'll just do it in a different way.
It's about the journey, Pat.
I want to play one more clip here because they talk about oil and gas exploration. That's the same clip, sorry, one more part of this. Because one of the things is to get to whatever it's called, net zero by 2030. Jack makes a really interesting point about if we're going to do all this new exploration, there's going to be null and void in 7 years from now. How does that work?
Those issues on oil and gas, for example, where we now have been importing 3 times the amount of Indonesian coal in order to fire up Huntly, when actually we could be using gas as a transitory transition.
Numbers are wrong.
Because I know that you keep on making that comment about coal. In the last 3 months of 2022...
Last 3 months it's come back, yep. It's been good.
So less coal was brought into New Zealand than in any other quarter in the last 32 years.
But not the experience over the last few years since the decision to ban oil and gas. I'm saying we need gas. It's better than coal. It's not as good as renewables. We'll need it for
We've got to hit totally renewable by 2030,
and we're
right?
going to be
So you're going to
pragmatic about
reintroduce gas for a couple of years, and you're thinking that these multinationals that are going to come in and explore for oil and gas,
Short-term
are going to say,
thinking.
we're only here for a couple of years.
And then what we're going to say is over the next 25 years, we're going to double the amount of renewable electricity. There is already in the sector...
The point he's just made very clearly is, do you really think that there's going to be big business who wants to come in and do all that work, not to have a payoff for the next 100 years, that they're going to get their payoff on oil and gas over the next 7 years? Of course they're not. Chewie, the one everyone's looking forward to, how many houses do you own, is still to come. Anything from the chat we want to get in there? Anything you want to jump in and talk about?
I want to pop something up, considering we're talking about electricity generation. It's something that I look at quite a bit.
Sure.
So obviously, one of the things that comes up heaps when we're talking about our electric future and cars and that sort of thing is this coal, right? We're bringing in fucking heaps of coal because our power grid isn't up to snuff and that sort of thing. We're just feeding Indonesian coal into Huntly, and it's terrible, and that's because of electric cars, right? You can look this up live, okay, on Transpower's website. Our current power generation live, what it's made up of. Now, if you see there at the top, at the moment, on a cold winter's night, when everybody's at home running their heat pumps and all of that sort of stuff, maybe they're charging their electric cars, our percentage of power generation that's renewable is 93%. 93%. So he wants to open up, get rid of coal, because coal's bad. Coal is 87 megawatts of our total production. It's one of the smallest ones. Gas is just up from that 266 megawatts. So I assume he wants to get rid of coal and have more gas. Geothermal generates more power than coal and gas combined.
Centre of the North Island, yep.
Yep, absolutely. Geothermal, something we very rarely think about. Geothermal is double what we generate from wind. So I think it's pretty clear where we have more capacity to build. It's wind. We're not doing anything with tidal generation. There's, hydro is a huge thing. Like we're not going to pull a hydro dam out of our ass anytime soon, but wind can be done a lot quicker. But yeah, when he's talking, nobody's going to come to New Zealand, find a new gas field, set up everything that's to extract and refine that for a couple of years. He's dreaming, and it's just the fossil fuel industry in his ear. It's so short-term thinking. It's not serious. He is not a serious man.
All right. Let's get to this last clip. And of course, the last clip is the one that people have been talking about as well.
The main event.
The main event. Ding, 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 ding. I don't know if I've got the question involved here or not, but they're talking about capital gains tax and how National has been very ardently spoken out about Labour's capital gains tax. Now, this clip is upwards of 8 minutes overall, I think. I don't know if we'll stop through it or we'll let it play through, but it goes into how many houses Christopher Luxon owns and how that relates to capital gains taxes. Is there potentially a conflict of interest? Let's release the Tame.
Let's talk tax. It has made up a big part of the election campaign so far. Your party has repeatedly insinuated that Labour is planning a capital gains tax. How many houses do you own?
I've been up front, 7 houses.
There are 120 MPs in Parliament. Who owns the most houses?
I have no idea.
Is there any MP you can
How
name
can you
who
not?
owns more houses than you?
Of course
I
he
don't
knows.
know, Jack.
Is there any MP you can name that owns more houses than you?
I don't know. I also don't. I don't have a clue
I
who owns
don't
what.
believe you.
When did you buy your investment properties? 4 of those 7 are investment properties, right?
Yes, 4 out of the 7 are investment properties, 3 are residential, and I must have bought them years ago. Yep.
How many years ago?
Oh, back since, I don't know, over different periods of time.
So
He
give
is
us some rough
rattled.
Oh, 2000 and I can't remember, Jack. Somewhere between when I arrived back home in New Zealand in 2012 to 2019, I presume.
2012. So roughly how much would your 4 investment properties have increased in value since you purchased
Have
them?
no idea.
Roughly how much?
I don't know. Honestly, don't know.
Okay, so if we take the median house value in Auckland, so from 2012, if you bought a house in 2012, it will have increased in value $500,000. So let's take a couple from 2015 as well, $250,000. You said up to 2019, you said?
Possibly, yes. Yeah.
Right. So theoretically, we're looking at capital gains of probably $1.5 million if you sold those houses today.
Oh, that's just
I don't
walking
know,
around money,
Jack.
Jack.
I honestly don't look at it. I don't follow it. I have those houses that
Yeah,
are part of my
so
investment.
Bullshit.
if we look
I've
at the
been very
median value,
transparent about it up front,
Yeah.
right from day one.
Well, good.
And I've been
Let's-
very open about it.
so
So Luxon's quote-unquote defence, if he is needing to defend himself, is I've already told people this. I've told people. They know I own 7 houses. Conversation over.
So if you look at the capital value of those properties, if you were to sell them today, you would make a profit of about $1.5 million. So under National's policy, how much tax would you pay on that $1.5 million?
Well, we don't believe that we need a capital gains tax, an inheritance tax, or a wealth tax.
So how much- how much-
What I love about this interview and what I'm loving about what Jack Tame's doing at the moment is he makes him say the number. He makes him say, I would pay nothing.
It's masterful.
I would pay nothing, because that's actually, people know that from him saying, well, there's no policy for anyone to pay, but he makes him say, I would pay nothing. And it's a very, very good bit of journalism.
Tax is a spending problem, not a tax problem.
So how much tax would you pay? Just to be totally clear, on what $1.5 million, how much tax
Well, we
would
don't
you
have a
would you
capital
pay?
gains tax here in New Zealand, Jack, so I wouldn't pay anything on a realised gain. So what I'm saying to you is, this, but I know I get where you're trying to get to, but the point is really clear. In New Zealand, we have a spending problem in New Zealand at the moment.
So no, but let's just.
And this is a government trying to raise lots of new creative taxes.
You're the one who keeps on bringing up the capital gains tax, so I want to focus on it. So $1.5 million in capital gains, $0 in tax. How do I know?
You're talking about
that's how much you would pay.
unrealised gains at the moment, right?
But if you were to sell them, right? If you were to sell them today, you'd make, let's say, back of the envelope, $1.5 million. You'd pay $0 in tax. So how do I know that you are not just opposing a capital gains tax, because that'll mean you pay more tax?
No, that's not fair. What we're talking about.
Yes, it is.
Look, I mean, I'm involved in conversations on broad housing policy.
Yeah, so
the housing policies are linked between owning homes, renting, state houses and emergency housing.
and
They're
investing.
all interrelated issues, right?
Back to
Irrelevant.
the question though, how do I know that you're not just doing it for your own gain?
No, because the government's own advisors said don't remove interest tax deductibility, don't
It's not
extend
what
the
I'm
bright
asking
line,
about.
don't
I'm asking
add
about,
costs to
I'm asking about capital
renters.
gains tax. What did they say about capital gains tax?
The capital gains tax, I'm
Didn't
telling you,
answer
we're not
that.
having a
No,
capital
I
gains
know.
tax
Yeah,
on
no, I'm
renters or
very
wealth
clear
tax.
on that. So
Because what we've got is a spending problem. in
No,
this
no,
country,
no,
not
no.
a tax problem.
You're trying to go
Fuck
somewhere
off.
else here.
Not a debt problem. We've got a debt problem and a
Lee,
tax
you want to
problem
be the
because
Prime
we're not
Minister, you
spending.
can answer these straight questions.
I'm giving you a straight answer.
How do I know that you don't oppose a capital gains tax? Because you, under a capital gains tax, would have to pay more tax.
I can tell you because I've been very transparent up front. I'm involved in broad housing
Because
policy
I've told people
conversations.
that I own
I
houses.
can tell you those things don't enter my mind about what happens for me
But we just have
personally.
to take your word on it, right?
But if there's an issue, I would talk to the Cabinet Office. I'll declare all of that. If they tell me to do something different, I'd do something different.
Why isn't this a conflict of interest?
Well, it's not because it's a broad conversation about housing policy. There are many MPs that have multiple houses in Parliament.
Yeah,
right?
but you,
It's not just me.
But you own the most investment properties. You own 4 investment properties, which by my count is the most investment properties of any MP in Parliament. You want to be Prime Minister, and one of your explicit promises is that you oppose a capital gains tax. A capital gains tax that would tax people like you.
Yeah, and what I can say to you really clearly is I'm involved in broad housing policy conversation. If there was something specific, I
Irrelevant.
can imagine that I'd want to recuse myself if a property had a red zone designation or something
So
like that.
would you
I will
recuse
take
yourself
all
from
my
any
interests to
conversations
the,
around
I will take
capital
all my
gains tax?
interests to the Cabinet Office, and whatever the Cabinet Office says I needs to do, I don't take 12 times to respond to that mitigation. If there is a real or a
way.
perceived conflict, I'd respond to their wishes. So I'm interested in solving problems in New
Yeah,
Zealand.
and I'm interested in your position on capital
and
gains
that's
tax
something
because
this
you've been very
government
strong
hasn't
about
achieved
it.
in 6 years.
How many people are employed by your investment properties?
Sorry?
How
I
many
love
people are
this.
employed by your investment properties?
Sorry, they're investment properties. What do you mean?
That's the point, right?
You're trying to make a point about capital gains tax.
No, the point I'm trying to make is actually about productivity. Because you said in your maiden speech that productivity was the #1 thing holding back our standard of living. You've sold yourself
Correct.
as a top business leader and economic expert, and with all your economic nous, you followed the incentives and you chose to put your money for investments into houses. And
can
now
see his eyes go,
you are
"Oh,
going
no."
to reverse all of those changes to property investment incentives. You will loosen the laws on residential landlords, you'll pull back the bright line test, you will reinstate interest deductibility. My question is, what will stop other New Zealanders from just doing what you did, following the incentives and pouring their money into unproductive assets like houses?
Let's just talk the rental market, right? Because it's been really unfair what Jacinda Ardern, Grant Robertson and Chris Hipkins have said. They have
You can almost see him. You can see his face. Like if I come back here, we don't have to play it. I'll turn the sound off, but you can see his face going, how am I going to respond? How am I going to respond? How am I going to respond? What am I going to say to this? How am I going to say to this? You just watch Luxon's face the whole time. He's just like, oh my shit. Oh shit. Okay. What am I going to say? How am I going to respond to this? What am I going to come out of it with? Yes. I'm a big believer in productivity, and the way I earn money is through non-productive assets. How am I going to respond to this? Oh crap! What should I say?
He has a
have I got a
towel.
talking point that will, what his lips are moving? Is that his towel?
No,
I
they're
will.
not. He goes,
What?
He goes, no lips, like that, and he blinks a lot when he's pissed.
And now he's
So
going.
he is as angry and unsettled as I've ever seen him.
Yep.
In this
And now
interview.
he's going, how am I going to respond? How am I going to respond?
Ardern, Grant Robertson and Chris
And he goes,
Hipkins.
I
He
know,
tilts
I
his
know,
head.
I know,
Just
I know.
talk
Talking
rental
points.
market,
Well, there's talking
Because
points
it's
about
been
bad
really
national,
unfair
a
what
bad Labour.
Jacinda Ardern,
Bad Labour,
Grant
bad Labour.
Robertson and Chris Hipkins have said. They have said that people who own rental homes are tax and property speculators. That is not the case.
Which they are.
72% of all landlords.
I'm a
are
former
mum and dad
landlord.
investors
Absolutely.
Who might have 1 or 2 rental properties that are augmenting for their retirement and for their superannuation, right? They are not evil property speculators. The government also received
said that they were
advice to
evil.
say, please don't actually remove interest deductibility. It's a legitimate business expense all around the world. And please don't extend the bright line test. Why? They're adding costs to landlords that lead to higher rents. Rents are up $160 a week under this government. I think about $50 of it is linked to those 2
Pull
policies.
that
that
number
doesn't
again.
So
answer
those
my question,
policies
though.
are bad policies,
Okay,
right?
so those
That's why they need to be removed.
That doesn't answer my question, though. What is to stop other people from just doing doing what Christopher Luxon, the economic expert, did and pouring their money into unproductive
I have a
assets like
range of
houses.
investments in what I do with my interests. I make no apology for it. And I know you and I have had this conversation before.
You're not giving me any examples of why people wouldn't just do what you're doing.
I'm a Kiwi kid who came from a pretty.
I'm a Kiwi kid. I ate my wheat
I
bits.
worked hard.
I'm not attacking
I
you for
did
your
well.
success. I'm
No,
not
but
attacking
you
you
are
for your
kind
wealth.
of.
No. I'm simply
What
asking
you're
someone
saying is
why
angry.
New
Can't
Zealanders
come into Parliament and actually make a contribution.
No,
and that's not fair.
what I'm saying is, why shouldn't other New Zealanders who want to emulate your success follow the same incentives you did and pour money into unproductive assets when you have said that productivity is the biggest problem facing this country?
Individuals make their own decisions around a mix of investments around their own personal interests and their personal assets. That's what I've done. What I've been really clear with everyone from day one is I've been incredibly transparent about it all. If at any point in time the Cabinet Office came to me and said, Chris, there's a conflict of interest, you need to take advice, and I would take that advice and do whatever they asked me to do. But the point is, this is broad housing policy. We are not building houses. The government has failed on every level.
You haven't given me
and I've
any
got
answers
ideas
on
about it.
productivity, which is what I've asked you about. But I want to ask you about.
All right, and then basically, there's another part of this conversation that got a little bit of noise about would he resign if there was any changes to abortion. We're not going to look at that tonight because it's a bit of a typical politician thing. Would you give it up? But we've just watched the final of the Rugby World Cup, basically, with the two best teams in the world. Well, actually, the one.
I was going to
best team
go
in the
with a
world and the one
boxing
under the world.
analogy.
Okay, you go first.
I was going for a boxing analogy. Jack out of the corner had Luxon on the ropes the entire time and never stopped beating on him. It was spectacular. I mean, there's questions that Jack was actually being super conservative with his estimation of how much capital gains he'd take.
Yeah, the housing prices.
And do you think realistically someone has forgotten when he purchased a whole ass house?
Well, if he did,
that he's not aware
but that
of
actually
his
speaks to
portfolio's worth.
If he did,
Bullshit.
doesn't that speak to either how much money they've got that they don't even know, or how much they want to avoid this conversation?
Yep. And the other point that he kept on going back to, right, is it's not a conflict of interest because I only talk about housing in very broad terms. Correct. One of the very broad terms you're talking about is we don't want a capital gains tax because I personally will profit over $1.5 million tax-free dollars. When we had those business leaders on the show the other week, and they were, the story of, the selling an office building and him going to his accountant, how much tax do we pay on this? And the accountant saying none. We have been running that particular scam for near 40 years. And that is why everybody with a bit of money has poured it into property. It is a safe bet. It does not have the risks of pouring it into a business that may or may not succeed. So therefore, the businesses that might have a good idea get no funding and everybody's buying houses. It's dumb.
I just think that's what epitomizes good journalism. That example.
It was a spectacularly good interview. I hope the same thing happens with every leader he gets on.
Yeah. 100%.
I want that sort of, as much as I don't like seeing my team have the screws turned to them, that's what I want. I want politicians to fear going on a show, but also fear not going on the show.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you're big enough that you have to go there, but you're not a part of the system to just let people say what they want to say, then that's the best case scenario. Whereas you find other particular large outlets, I'm thinking of a particular radio station, one side of the political spectrum gets a nose up the arse and the other side gets, mocking and is it derision a word, to deride?
Yep.
Yep. And I mean, I think Jack, for all what people will say about publicly funded entities and stuff, is actually a pretty straight shooter when it comes to interviewing whoever the person sitting in the other seat is. So it was great. It was great, and I actually think it showed up so many holes as well. And I wonder if we'll never see Christopher Luxon. The thing that I say about Jack Tame being a bit of a straight shooter is he defended Luxon during the week about the have more babies comments. I think Jack's wrong. No, I don't think Jack's wrong. I think Jack missed something. And the thing about the have baby comments is actually what Jack didn't say is what the thing about that comments are. And we said very clearly when we covered this that it was about he was making a bad joke. But the thing is, you've got a leader who can't read the room. Not the literal room he's in, a leader who can't read the room of what's going to happen to the words that vomit out of his mouth. Abortion is tantamount to murder. Women are going to pay for their prescription fees. Hey, we should have more babies. If you can't read the room to know that third comment, be it fair or not, is going to go off the deep end, then that's on you. And when Jack defended him saying it was just a joke, the part that he left out in his Twitter feed about it was, but Luxon doesn't read the room in those instances. And then think about the Prime Minister of the country in a G20 or a G40 kind of conference not reading the room. What could come of that? That's what I wonder.
Yeah. The other thing I want to push back on, because I saw Luxon sort of hint at this, and I've seen a lot of it online today, is the myth of conflating I am wealthy and successful with hard work.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm not saying that they worked hard, they put in long hours, whatever, but it's that conflation of, if you're not wealthy and successful like me, then you can't work hard. There are people out there on the breadline, under the median wage and that sort of thing, that are working jobs that would kill someone like Chris Luxon. Night shifts and all of that work. I hate it. I detest it. That you're just jealous of my success that I have got through hard work. We've spoken about this. Chris Luxon has not built anything. He has worked for other big companies. He has ended up on boards. He's not a businessman. He's a board member. So to say that you worked hard, like I would say that, and I'm going to hate this. I'm going to hate it. I'm going to hate the words coming out of my mouth. I would say that John Key worked harder for his money than Luxon did. Because he would have put in ridiculous, stupid hours in his early brokerage days. Because those guys were all on fucking shares and coke. So I would say, yeah, you would have put in long hours. But yeah, I don't like it. I hate it every time I hear it. If you don't have money, you did not work hard.
All right, let's get to some text and stuff as well, if anything's been in there. But before we do that, I haven't done this tonight. Thank you to our patrons. Really do appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody, but in particular, if you're with our patrons at the moment, we are happy to see you, happy to have you on board. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News if you want to be a part of what we do. The other thing you can see is screaming along the bottom of the screen is our audio podcast. Head to Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and search for #BHN. You'll find us straight away. Subscribe to one of those. If you are the kind of person that you subscribe to all of those, then our preference would be that you subscribe to Apple Podcasts. That helps us in the charts. That helps us get access to people. Apple Podcasts is the place to be. Spotify, Google Podcasts as well. And thanks to our patrons for being on board. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News to be a part of that. As we wrap up, True Meister General, as I said to people at the start of the show, if you weren't here, I don't know what is happening with the show for the rest of this week. We have a family bereavement situation going on. So this may be the only show for this week. I genuinely don't know. But if you follow me and Chewy on Twitter, then you'll be updated when we are. I'll also make sure as much as I can I update. You can put messages on YouTube as well. I know most people watch it on YouTube. I'll put messages up there and let you know what's happening. If you see no messages, I guess we're on. That'll be probably a pretty fair rule of thumb. Sorry, Chewy, I got in the way. Chats.
Yes, chats. I'm going to put up a couple of chats. Where are we? Let's talk wet and whiny.
Yeah, I saw a headline from talking
you
about him being
that?
whiny. I didn't read the story.
Have you not seen the story?
I saw the headline.
Okay.
I haven't seen the story.
Okay, I'll do a couple of chats, and then I think I have a couple of tabs that I can put up that just cover this. So, but the chats first. Simon here says Jack Tame has said on the Working Group podcast that he despises both major parties. Fantastic. Right. I'm all for that. Brilliant. Arrest JK echoing my thoughts there. Cleaners work hard. They pay their taxes. Brent here says Jack way underestimates the value of Luxon's houses. The one on the Strand in Waiheke is easily $3 million.
But remember, I'm not to defend, but just for accuracy, that may not be one of his rentals. I mean, he said they own 3. That might be his weekend holiday house. I don't know.
I mean, one of them as well is his electorate office that we pay for.
Yeah.
Is like when a lot of MPs will have a shop front. Luxon has a whole 3-bedroom house as his electorate office that we pay for.
Yeah.
You know, Sunset here says, yes, we agree with Luxon. We have a spending problem in New Zealand. We don't spend enough on government services. Correct.
Very good.
Yeah. And I'm going to call this the comment of the night from Gary. We must all work hard to make certain that we can once again enjoy swimming in the tears of Mike Hosking on election night. And I think that's honourable, and that's something we should all work towards.
Is that the last one? Because I've got your story for you as well. This one here?
Oh, yep. Let's crack on with this, because this is fantastic.
This has got 19 seconds. I haven't seen this, but I'm assuming that he says something. Should I play the 19
It
seconds?
is quite hard to hear, so you might need to turn it up a little bit.
All right, I'm going to turn it up. Here we go.
No, it's awesome, mate. It's so good to be hosting this here. I really appreciate it. We have become a very negative, wet, whiny, inward-looking country, and we have lost the plot. And we've got to get our mojo.
Wet, whiny, inward-looking were the 3 words he just said. For people who are listening to the audio podcast. His comments were made while chatting to farmers on a farm in Helensville this afternoon, where he announced an agricultural emissions policy. Speaking to the owner of the property, Luxon thanks them for hosting the visit. We've become a very negative, wet, whiny, inward-looking country, and we have lost the plot. Now, that's good. I wonder if he needs to go back to Canada then, if we're not good enough. I hadn't read that headline yet, but there you go.
He has made similar comments to that before. The question was posed to Hipkins today at his press stand-up whether he'd heard those comments. Hipkins' reaction was spectacular. He was like, I'm sorry, Christopher Luxon said that. And then he took a beat and he says, well, I guess it's you've got it there. Yeah,
should we play
chuck that
I haven't heard this.
Yeah,
It's not queued up. Let's just play it and see if it's spectacular.
When he says that you guys took Waka Ikinoa, you blew it up, you shot it to bits and killed it. Are they wrong?
Yes.
Can I also quote him again for you as well? Up on that farm in Helensville, he said that New Zealand is a negative, wet, whiny, inward-looking country that's lost the plot. Would you agree with that?
Sorry, Christopher Luxon said that. Well, I mean, I guess it makes a change that he's running New Zealand down in New Zealand as opposed to running the country down when he's overseas.
And is it insanely stupid that we have not been allowing GE and GM in this country?
It's a difficult issue.
It's a lot, but a good one. Yeah,
Wow.
so I mean, he's making reference to the comments that he made over in the UK and to the Sydney Morning Herald. He also almost exactly said that phrase when he was in Queenstown to a publication called The Crux, where he said we were inward and whiny.
So if you were in America in the conservative world, who are the patriots and God love America, how would it go down to think about your country that you're supposed to be the leader of on the conservative side of politics, talking it down? I just that seems bizarre to me.
Yeah,
I don't know how that can stand for their voters. I mean, does that just give another 1% of the vote to act?
I wonder what Chris is holding here. Should I scroll down?
Go on, show us. Keep going.
If you're a politician, never get caught holding a sign. Someone will Photoshop the shit out of it.
Exactly. All right. Is there any other chats? Because it's time to move on.
No, I think we'll leave that for tonight. We've packed in so much. It's been so busy.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us tonight, team. Really appreciate your time. As I said, not sure what's going to be happening over the next wee while. We do have Free Soul, who's there in the chat with us. Absolutely. Yeah, Trump run down the US, but he runs it down and then blames the Dems for it. That's not what Luxon did. He just ran it down. Trump says we're a third world country thanks to Joe Biden. You know, he's a way of doing it. Free Soul's in the chat there, who's going to be helping us out for the next wee while to make sure we get some content out to you when we can. I'm not sure when that will be, but as I said, follow me on Twitter, follow Chewy on Twitter, and when we know, you'll know. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel because I'll also put announcements up there as well. And we don't use the Facebook page very much, but we do live stream there. So if I put an announcement up on YouTube, I'll also put it up on the Facebook page as well. So you can like us on Facebook to get all those things as well. All right, Chewy, I think we're done. Anything else you want to wrap up with?
Just if Chris could just calm the farm a little bit and just give us a chance to recover, that would be awesome. I'm sure
my sides are
during this. I know. I'm sure we'll have to spin up another show covering his walk back or clarification, where he thinks he's been very clear, and what I actually meant was this. I assume that's going to give us content for the rest of the week. So
excellent.
I look forward to
good.
it.
All right. Thanks, team. We'll catch you, I'll say it, tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition, or whenever we see you again. And it's been lovely spending time with you tonight. It's been a nice take my mind off things as well. So I appreciate that from everybody. And we will catch you when we catch you here in Big Hairy News. Hooroo, team.
Hey, fam.